it's just setting up now. Looks like we are live. Okay, so here we go. All right, well, hello everyone again. I am Caleb Hale. I am the Director of Communication for the SIU Alumni Association, as well as the editor of SIU Alumni Magazine. Thanks to everyone again who's joining us for another edition of our live stream chats that we're hosting. Wanted to take just a few moments to do some housekeeping items as I normally do. First thing would be with regard to the Salukis Cares Student Emergency Fund. Obviously, these are difficult times due to the global pandemic that everyone's facing. No more so than some of our students whose lives, their education semester has basically been interrupted by this. But the good news in all this is that there's been a number of people, more than 1,000 actually, donors who have stepped up to raise more than 240,000, as you see there, for this fund. And obviously, we know not everyone is in a position where they can donate to this fund, but wanted to give you everyone a little bit of a look at what these dollars are going for here. So since we started raising money for this last month, they've assisted over 2,000 requests by students for various needs, including some of that is 800 boxes of food, over 100 laptops, because some students are in need to with that to help continue doing their work for classes, especially now that they are going online. They've assisted an additional 30 students with help with internet access to get them set up. They're processing more than 150,000 of that in emergency grant applications. There are single parent students who need help with infant care items that this has been helping towards. And they've processed over 300 emergency fund requests for items such as rent, utilities, medicines, books, and transportations. So as you can see, it's a good cause, and it's something that you can donate to if you feel you are able to do that. And right now, the SIU Alumni Association is also offering a little bit of a special gift for anyone who donates $10 or more. We have a Salukis neck scarf and some hand sanitizer, which is pretty useful these days. But to anyone who donates $10 or more to the Student Emergency Fund right now, that scarf can actually go up over your face, and it can kind of serve as a facial covering as well if you don't have any other means of covering your face, or if you just want to show some Salukis spirit while you are out in the store. That's a good thing for you to have. So it's salukifunder.siu.edu. You can give online, fairly easy at any time, and yeah, check it out if you can. Thank you to everyone who has been able to donate so far and help us out. But today, speaking of stepping up, how's that for a transition, guys? We're talking with Dan Sepulveda, Mark Yoder, and Bill Bruns, who, I believe this was last year, correct, guys?
Yeah,
correct.
Last year, they did a climb up Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Africa. It was a fundraising effort for St. Jude, and it was something that actually brought together two of our alumni, Dan and Mark, from different generations, which was kind of interesting part of the story itself. But I'm going to let them introduce themselves to start off with, and we'll start with Dan.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Dan Sepulveda. I'm a SIU Carbondale class of 2009. After Carbondale, enlisted in the Navy, did some deployments overseas. and then has since transitioned to a much nicer life here in Hawaii, where I do real estate. That's about it.
Okay, and Bill, tell us what your role in this is.
I am the Deputy Director of the SIU Student Center. I know Dan because not only was he involved in working in the Student Center when he was an undergraduate, but he was also 2-year president of the Tau Kappa Epsilon fraternity at SIU, which I am the chapter advisor of.
All right, and Mark?
And I'm Mark Yoder, and I'm living out here in beautiful Colorado Springs, Colorado, as you can probably tell by the background. And so I'm an alumni of SIU. I graduated in 1980, and so I became a Tau Kappa Epsilon fraternity brother in the year 1977. So I've got a couple of years on Dan, but I went into the Air Force, did about 17 years and did an early retirement so I could join the computer IT industry. And so for about 21 years, I worked in the computer IT industry for such companies there as Hewlett Packard and Oracle Corporation, and then retired about 1.5 years ago.
All right. And yeah, just to sort out what our background situations are at the moment, Dan, if you didn't hear, he's coming to you from Hawaii, not actually where he apparently needs to mow his grass. Apparently, I don't know what's going on behind him. Mark, while up in Colorado, has decided for a beach scene for his background, and Bill is apparently just standing outside of campus in front of the sign. I'm safe and comfortable in my dining room here at the moment. But all right, so let's get started with what were kind of the origins of what started this climb. And Dan, if you can kind of start there, because this was something you were already intending to do, but you turned it into a fundraiser. So how did that all come about?
Sure. So how it kind of transpired was at my brokerage, a good friend and buddy of mine. He invited me to this climb in Africa. Kind of understated the intensity of it, but you know, I'm always down for a good challenge anyway. So after much debate and some friendly conversation with my wife, you know, we agreed that, you know, I'd be able to go do this climb on, you know, the world's largest freestanding mountain. Kind of in the midst of that, Bill Bruns and I, we were speaking, and we had some plans in the making to do a, what is it, 70-year?
70th anniversary reunion for the 70th anniversary of the founding of the fraternity. Tau Kappa Epsilon's the oldest national fraternity on campus.
Right. So Bill and I were speaking about me possibly coming down there. As Bill said, I had some time on the executive board during my undergrad there, and some large influence on, you know, the few generations that came through during my short tenure there. You know, we were speaking of possibly coming back and doing a little fundraising to get some of the old guys back down to SIU and both celebrate and you know, celebrate our founding. Unfortunately, I had to decline because I did have these prior obligations to climb this mountain, and you know, had been, after I hung up the phone with Bill, you know, it kind of got the gears turning, and it's just like, well, how can I use this opportunity to not only do something, you know, incredibly different with my life, but you know, maybe turn around and give back to the fraternity in the shape of a philanthropy. So it was just like this wild, crazy idea, you know, no idea how to execute, kind of planted the bug. And yeah, we just kind of went from there and turned it into a philanthropy event for St. Jude.
Okay. And I know we picked up on it at the association, and I believe we ran something about it in the newsletter. Then that was coming out at a time, and that's where Mark comes in, because he kind of picked up on the newsletter, and from there, Mark, I'll let you kind of take it.
All right. Yeah. So I read in the chapter, the Tau Kappa Epsilon chapter alumni newsletter, read in there a story there that there was going to be a fundraiser there for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and Dan was going to attempt to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Well, I have been climbing a lot of the 14,000 foot mountains here in Colorado. And when I went and retired from Oracle Corporation there, it was the end of the summer of 2018. I actually told all of my work colleagues I needed more free time to go and climb more mountains. And so when I read that article there that was in the newsletter there, I go, perfect. You know, Mount Kilimanjaro, as Dan just said, it's the roof of Africa. It's one of the tallest freestanding mountains that's out there. I have a little bit of a connection to Dan, even though that we're maybe 30 years difference in age. And so I asked Bill if I could go and get a hold of Dan and see if he would allow me to go and join him on that climb and combine it there as a fundraiser there for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. Everything fell in place. We got everything booked, and it was a go.
Well, how much mountain climbing were you doing prior to this?
Well, prior to this, I think I've accomplished about 12 or 13 14,000 foot mountains that I've done here in Colorado.
Okay.
Number of those mountains there that I have left to do, because of the distance and the altitude gain, you got to backpack in and kind of take a couple of days there to accomplish climbing some of them. And so that's really similar to what Dan and I we're going to be doing there with Mount Kilimanjaro. The distance that you have to climb and the elevation gain requires you to backpack for a few days. And so I felt I was ready to go and do that. And I was really looking forward to it.
Okay. All right. And Bill, you were kind of flying the support on this mission. So tell me a little bit about what your role was in that.
Right. Let's be real clear here. I'm not climbing any mountains. These two guys, Mark and Dan, these guys are the superstars. However, one of my functions in my life is IT. I run IT for the Student Center, and I've done it for other universities, built networks, blah, blah, blah. So I'm fairly social media savvy. So I thought, okay, so if we're going to run a fundraiser and try to raise money for St. Jude, I'm going to have to promote this thing. So me and a couple of the undergraduates, Jesse Robertson in particular, who's much better at Instagram and Twitter than I am. I'm generally a Facebook guy. Every day that they were going up the mountains, they would stop to camp in the evening. And Mark had some kind of Garmin, I think, GPS locator device, and he'd send me
GPS
transponder, and he'd send a ping that I would receive, so that I had an actual elevation map that showed me where on the mountain they were, and I had information about the campsite. So every day I would make a post to Facebook saying, hey, this is where they successfully climbed, you know, a whole bunch of part of the mountain to this place. This is where they are. You can see where they are. And oh, by the way, here's a link to the St. Jude website for this event, and you can make a donation there for the Children's Hospital.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get a little bit into, you know, what the climb was like, what the preparations were, what it kind of looked like day by day. Mark, this is where I think you brought the pictures to the table, so we'll let you uh, take on the visuals from here on out.
Okay. Well, let me hit the that question first there. So preparation.
Uh-huh.
Both Dan and I got kind of like a training guide there that anyone who's going to try and do Mount Kilimanjaro, there's recommendations that are in there. And so for 3 months beforehand, all of us climbers, and there was 20 of us climbers that were part of this this tour. So we were all trying to get ready. And so, you know, I kind of teased Dan and a couple of the other guys that, you know, living here at 7,000 feet elevation, I have a little bit of an advantage for the altitude. But, you know, all collectively, everyone was trying to get their legs ready, get their lungs ready. And so we were training beforehand. But let me go ahead and start sharing some photos there. Let's see, share screen. I'm going to, okay, can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay, so just to kind of kick this off, so this this webinar, this is really talking about the article that was published in the SIU Alumni there for the summer 2019 edition. And Barb is on the phone, and she's the author of that article there. And Barb did a fantastic job on that article. And all what Dan and I did is we just posed for pictures. Like this picture right here is up on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. We're a little bit winded, but we did eventually make it to the top. But let's start a little bit at the beginning there. So at the beginning there, we had to get to to Tanzania. And at Tanzania, we had a base camp there near Moshi, the city of Moshi, Tanzania, that we stayed at this resort. All of the climbers all got together. We reviewed, you know, what was going to be happening for the next week ahead of us. So that was kind of our base camp, was at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro right here. And so during that 1 or 2 days that we were at the base camp, we had a really marvelous experience there, where we got to spend a half a day with Jane Goodall. And Barb wrote about this in the article, but we're at our base camp there, just reviewing and getting ready there for our climb. And we were able to meet for a half a day with Jane Goodall. And Jane was kind enough there to speak to us for a few minutes. I think that turned into about 45 minutes. Does that sound about right, Dan?
Sounds about right.
And so she spoke to us there on 4 topics there. The first topic, of course, was her time in Tanzania there when she was working with the chimpanzees, you know, studying them and writing about them. So she talked about that time period. The second topic she talked about there was how animals can be trained to help mankind. And she gave a couple of examples there where a rat can be trained to go inside of like metal shipping containers to go and inspect it there to see if there's any illegal drugs or if there's any explosives that are inside those shipping containers. And also animals can be trained to go into minefields to locate, you know, any buried mines. And the third topic there that Jane had there to share with us all was deforestation. So she talked about the impact of deforestation, of what it actually had there on Mount Kilimanjaro, and that she actually saw from 50 years ago. A lot of the farmers there were clearing the forest, the rainforest, and was turning some of the trees there to make coal, charcoal. And that deforestation had a negative climate change on Mount Kilimanjaro and the surrounding areas there. So it basically what her message was is that the deforestation there was causing the climate to be much drier. So there was less moisture on Mount Kilimanjaro. So there was less glaciers, and there was less water coming off the mountain to go and feed the savanna and the farm area. And so then her fourth topic there was about a foundation. One of her foundations is called Roots and Shoots. Let me just advance the photo here. So here's Dan and I with Jane. But then the third foundation, or one of the foundations she has, is called Roots and Shoots. And there's chapters all over the many countries around the world. And what those Roots and Shoot chapters do is they encourage people to go out and reforest their countries, to go out and plant trees. And so Dan and I had the pleasure there to each plant a couple of trees ourselves. And there was a grand total of 2,041 trees that were planted. The very last tree, Barney Swan and Jane Goodall planted the very last tree together. So that was the 2041st tree that we collectively helped to plant. And let me introduce who Barry Swan is a little bit, and I'll ask Dan to add to it. But Barney was one of the climbers with us, one of the 20 climbers with us. And Barney's dad is Sir Robert Swan, and he runs the 2041 Climate Force organization. And Barney, of course, is part of that organization and travels around internationally and speaks about the environmental impact there that's we are experiencing. Now, there's a very important number there, 2041. That's the year 2041 when the Antarctic Treaty expires. And so Barney and his dad is drawing attention to the fact that the Antarctica Treaty is going to be coming up for renegotiation in the year 2041, and that we need to do something about that to help protect that continent. And so Barney, working with Jane, they planted the 2041st tree together to help symbolize that. Let's see, Dan, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just real quick, I think it was, man, it doesn't do him enough justice. What Barney's mission is he's just spreading awareness in a manner which I guess like my generation, maybe this millennial generation can understand that this is going to have this carbon impact on the world, and, you know, deforestation, greenhouse gases, all that. He's just raising that awareness for our generation that this is going to be an impact on, you know, the tail end of our lives, as well as the generations that follow. So, you know, he's just really planting the bug. I mean, throughout the entire, you know, 5 days up, 2 down or something like that trek, you know, he's bouncing around to each member, each of those 20 members, and just kind of picking their brain on like, you know, what have you learned? What have you learned throughout this process? And, you know, I guess coming from Southern Illinois wasn't really on my radar, but, you know, coming out here to Hawaii, you know, we see the impact of plastic in the oceans and, you know, the deforestation of the minimal land we have here on an island. And, you know, just really got the gears kind of turning. And really the great impact and the great realization that I had was when, you know, we were actually on the peak of Kilimanjaro, and, you know, one of our porters and our guides, you know, we're just kind of conversing with them, and we're staring at a glacier, and these guys have photos and videos of this glacier just slowly eroding from the earth, something that, you know, should just remain for a long time. They're just watching it whittle away every time they go up. And, you know, it just kind of brought like a whole new level of awareness, at least to me personally, and I'm sure to a lot of the other, you know, trekkers that went up the mountain, that, you know, this carbon impact that we're having on the world is significant. And, you know, the smallest bit of action, you know, one is greater than none, you know, plant a single tree, you know, use less plastic, whatever it may be, any single action times, you know, all the people in the world, you know, is going to make an impact. We're seeing it right now. As a matter of fact, we're seeing it right now. And unfortunately with this COVID thing, but the less people on the street, the less cars on the street, all that, we're seeing that global impact. So it is real. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty amazing when you can see it with your own eyes.
Right.
Some of the impacts that you're having when you can visibly come out there from day to day and notice these kinds of events that, you know, you've always been taught take, you know, thousands and sometimes millions of years to change, but it's changing within the span of an individual's life. So that's definitely something that gives you pause once you finally see it for yourself.
Exactly.
All right, Mark, I'll turn it, you'll have to share back on your screen. I'll turn it back over to you. Okay. So we can continue with the story of the climb itself.
All right. So can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, we can see it.
So, you know, after we spent that half a day with Jane, the very next day we were starting our climb. And so these are the hiking routes that are there to get up to the very peak there of Mount Kilimanjaro. And so on the yellow there, I kind of showed the route that we took. So we started down here in the bottom left there, and it's actually basically a rainforest that we started in. And so the first day we got up there to Shira Camp, and then cross from left all the way to the right, and then on the sixth day, very early in the sixth day, we start up to the very peak. So that's basically the route that we took.
In terms of just ease of difficulty, was this where did this fall along those routes?
Yeah, and so a couple of facts there. So it's I believe we did around 54, 56 kilometers, about 38 miles. The elevation gain we did, I think we did over 16,000 foot elevation gain. We did 6 nights camping out, so seven days and 6 nights is how long it was. You know, every day we had some elevation gain, and anywhere from, I think, 6 or 8 miles to maybe 3 miles that we walked every day.
Okay.
And so that's basically the route we took. And so I'm just going to go and hit a couple of interesting photos there to share with you. And before I do that, let's see, Dan, anything else, general comments there on this route or this trail map there that you want to comment on?
Sure. Couple different things to hit. Mark had mentioned or he stated the word ecosystem, and I just want to elaborate on that. That was one of the most phenomenal pieces to me, because as you said, when we entered the Machame Gate camp at the start of the trail, we're literally entering a rainforest. The monkeys are playing with us. They're throwing things at us.
And they're trying to eat our food.
So it was phenomenal. We're literally entering a rainforest, you know, with all of the animals and everything. And then as we progressed through this route, one thing that was really crazy to me is that the different ecosystems that we entered throughout. During my time in the military, I was stationed with the Marines as a Navy corpsman, and I was stationed in both 29 Palms. Did some time in Afghanistan and did some training in like the northern mountains of California and cold weather training. And it was like almost every single environment I've ever trained in, we hit on that trail. We did the rainforest, which I've, you know, kind of half experienced here in Hawaii. At one point or another, it looks like we're hiking through Joshua Tree in California. And then as we hit the peak, you know, we're like, it looks like Bridgeport in California to me. So it was just really phenomenal how, the ecosystems changed along this, you know, I mean, to say short route would be an injustice, but along this route, we hit so many ecosystems. And level of difficulty, you know, to say that it was easy would be a disservice, but so long as the biggest key, I guess, falling back on my my medic skills, you know, just going up and down the route of the guys, just making sure that everybody's just putting one foot in front of the other, being conscious of their breathing, changing their socks. But it wasn't too difficult so long as you are consciously taking each step, you know, with intention. So that's all I got.
Okay, well, I'm going to step through a couple of these slides. So as was mentioned, we started off basically in a rainforest, got away from those monkeys. And of course, what happens in a rainforest? It rains a little bit. So this is the group of the 20 climbers that we were with. We were started with about an hour or so of drizzly rain, but it was a beautiful rainforest that we were going through. There were sections with huge trees with vines, and you could see some of the wildlife that was, hiding out there and kind of watching us as we're going up. So that was day one. And in the evening of day one, we finally got to our camp for the night, and our porters had it all set up for us. And those yellow tents in the back is our dining tents. And this beautiful little tall tent and with the orange, well, you can guess, yes, that's the outhouse for us. But we did about 11 kilometers and nearly 4,000 foot elevation gain. And to Dan's point, if you look there, you can see the vegetation has changed. So now we got shorter, scrubbier type trees that are out there. We're really kind of out of that rainforest type climate. And so that's the end of day one. So when we go to day two, about midday, we finally got a really good view there of Mount Kilimanjaro. And so you can kind of see a little bit there that there's still some scrubby vegetation that we have. But look at that beautiful snow that's on there. And this was one of the nice pictures. There's some other gorgeous pictures that are coming up. But we're just marching right along the south face of Mount Kilimanjaro. I think we're probably getting close to 10,000 foot elevation. And as we're going through, we went through a very eerie kind of a forest area there. There was all of these dead trees that had this bearded lichen growing on it. So kind of like a Spanish moss almost. And perfect timing, we had a cloud bank that came through here. So it made it a really eerie looking view for us. But this is just another example there of a different type of vegetation as we're climbing through Mount Kilimanjaro.
How often did you come across something that you just had not ever experienced before, whether it be it just in terms of
well, I'll answer that, and then I'll let Dan answer it. But I would say multiple times we'd come across different ecosystems there where it's like just pure lava, if you will, boulders. Other places like this where there's all of this moss that's growing, and of course the rainforest. So I would say every day it was a different type of a climate there that we were able to go and see. Dan, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd completely agree. I mean, each day was almost a gift in and of itself. Just a different environment, a different feel, a different, scenery. None of which, reminiscent of some things I've experienced, but still all new.
Okay, so then at the end of day two, we had a really positive thing that we got to experience is all of our porters and our guides they all got together and they sang songs and they danced and they had all of the climbers come out there and join them. So this was like right before dinner. They started singing, and of course everyone comes out of their tent to see what's going on. And so this was a really positive experience there, all singing and dancing together. And let's see, Dan, anything there that you wanted to add? Did you do any break dancing in the middle there, Dan?
Oh, no break dancing, but it was hard not to get lost in the in the celebration. You know, a lot of songs that you've never heard sung in your life. You start getting into the movement of everything. One of the big shockers for me was the fact that Hakuna Matata is actually a real thing in Africa. It's on the bracelets and it's in a lot of the songs that we sang, and yeah, no worries. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was a absolutely neat experience there to do that singing and the dancing with the porters and guides. So on day 3, we had kind of an interesting lunch stop. So one of the things there that they're trying to do, the guides are trying to do, is they're trying to get us conditioned for the altitude. And so we'll go up high in altitude and then come back down lower and camp for the night. And so this lunch stop was at 15,000 feet elevation, and they call it the Lava Tower Camp. And so on the photo over on the right, you can see the Lava Tower. And then you can see our lunch tent with a couple of the climbers there that was with us. And so we stopped here, but it was a challenge. This altitude was really a challenge there. People, especially if you're not used to some of the elevation. Dan, you want to comment about altitude sickness there? And
Sure. One quick little fact though. The one I just saw one of the females in there. Her name was Camille.
Oh, Camille. Yeah.
Right. So Camille here. Fun fact about her, just in an odd, I guess, stroke of luck, or it was just weird. There's 2 females on it, and I can't tell if that's what's her name, Bree. But one of the females on the trek with us, her uncle was a teak from another university. She had teaks in her family, so we thought that was pretty cool. And then Camille here, her grandparents live in Carbondale. So pushing forward after this article and everything was released with the Alumni Association, her grandparents caught wind of this article in this magazine and reached out to her and said, "Hey, do you know these guys?" So it was just a cool little small world thing that kind of happened with some other of the trekkers. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. She's got grandparents right there in Carbondale. But yeah, so speaking a little bit to altitude sickness. Altitude sickness is something I was aware of, through some training in the military. And I was kind of prepared for it. As Mark said, the intent with hiking some elevation like this is to hike high, camp low, so that your body acclimatizes to the new elevation. Kind of knew what I was getting into. I was pretty good the majority of the trek, but I definitely experienced my fair share of elevation sickness that day. What I would I guess describe it as is a midday, almost like a midday hangover, maybe during an SIU homecoming event.
I think we described it as about 6 p.m. on a good homecoming.
Yeah, exactly. So 6 p.m. on a good homecoming, you reap what you sow, but then you get back after it, because that's exactly what we did that day. We had a little bit of lunch, a little bit of rest, and then we were back on the road. So yeah, something that everybody kind of experienced in their own ways, but was able to push through. So,
Mark, did you experience any of that? Even though you'd had a little more living up higher than most people, though.
Yeah, I did fairly good, but you know, I would say that I had a tinge right here at the lava tower. I noticed there that I guess I want to say maybe an onset of possible altitude sickness. I hate to call it sickness. It's just that yes, you know that you're at 15,000 feet elevation and the air is thin, and you need to respect that. And so I think all of the climbers brought with them some altitude sickness medicine. I didn't use mine until I was about ready to, you know, the day before I was going to do the summit. But some of the other climbers was using the altitude sickness medicine the whole time.
And how do you kind of have to manage it as you're experiencing it? What are kind of the recommendations to dealing with it as you go along?
I'm trying to remember what my doctor told me, and Dan's our closest doctor here. But I don't know if there's a lot of fluid. Dan, what are they to manage altitude?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much with everything, you're going to want to take a lot of fluids. Definitely don't forget to eat. You know, the easiest thing to do on a hike like this is to really get your electrolytes out of whack and imbalanced. So, you know, you want to continue to eat. A lot of people are just like, you know, well, you know, they see eating as like, you know, what you're going to have to do after you eat. So they don't want to inconvenience themselves along the trail. However, when you're depleting all your sugars and your salts and everything like that throughout the hike, it's just imperative to do so. So yeah, I mean, a lot of common sense stuff, but you know, with the elevation itself, I mean, there's not much that you can do aside from, again, just hiking high and then camping low. There's not much you can do to really prepare for that because your body's just in a new environment.
And just to add to that, I would say that our guides are well trained there to watch or manage the climbers there, because they, you know, every month they've got new climbers that are coming through. And I would say that they keep a good eye out there to see how are the climbers doing. Are they noticing any of them having any difficulty? So that's the other, I guess, safety net that's out there, is that we had some good guides there that were looking out for us.
Well, that'll do it for our medical advice portion of the show. We'll let you, Mark. I'll let you get back to the photos.
Okay. Well, then this is absolutely gorgeous photos here from the morning of the fourth day. And a matter of fact, I think a similar photo like this, Barb put in the SIU Alumni Magazine article. And so once again, we're just scooting around that south side of Mount Kilimanjaro. This is in the Baranco Camp that we're at. And after breakfast, we're going to hit the Baranco Wall. And this wall is over, it's almost a cliff. It's about 800 feet high. And we had to kind of do a little zigzag, or actually it's called switchbacks, to go up this very steep wall. And so we got to sit here in camp and see it, you know, the night before, and then actually do it on the morning of the 4th. But just some absolutely gorgeous views. And you can see there's a little bit of scrubby grass, but no trees. So on the 5th day morning, we also, you know, this had a long climb. So on the right side, you can see the trail. All the little ants are there. Those are all the mountain climbers. Very long trail. It's also very lava. If you kind of look there on the right, it's just lava boulders. It's, you know, lava rock, sand, you know, very barren. And so that's
Were you encountering that? Were there other groups of hikers
yes,
working alongside you, or were you all part of one group?
And actually, that's a good question there. So just as a reminder, Mount Kilimanjaro is a national park. And so the country of Tanzania is managing this national park, and they manage, how many climbers and how many porters are going on what routes. And so they're trying to manage their natural resources. And so, yes, there was multiple other hiking parties that were there, and they stay at designated campsites, and that was on that trail map there that we showed you at the beginning. And so, as you can see in the picture on the right, all the little climbers that are there, there was lots of other groups there on these trails at the same time.
Okay.
And let's go here to day 6. So let me set this up a little bit, and I'll let Dan comment on it. So on the night of day 5, we went to had an early dinner, went to bed early because we were going to be getting up at 1 a.m. in the morning. So the day 6 is a very long day. So you're going to you're camping out at 15,000 feet elevation. And oh, by the way, every single night, I believe every single night it was below freezing. So we had those thin-walled tents, but we all did have mummy sleeping bags. But every night it was below freezing, and there was actually some frozen rain on our tent. I remember one night going back to my tent after dinner. But on day 6, we woke up at about 1 a.m., had breakfast. I think most people put on like about 3 layers of clothing because it's freezing outside. We had our headlamps, it's dark out. And so we started climbing, starting at 15,000 feet elevation, started climbing to the peak. And that climb there, since you're already at 15,000 feet elevation, the air is thin, and the rate that you're climbing is like 1 foot in front of another, 1 foot in front of another. It's a very slow pace. Dan, you want to comment about that early morning start?
Sure. As Mark was saying previously, the porters are very skilled in what they do, and they spent this was on the morning of day 6, so they spent the previous 5 days really getting to know the group of trekkers, and they understand the body language, they understand the capabilities, they understand pretty much all the non verbal language aspects of how people's bodies are reacting to the ever-changing climate. So how they actually broke it down was, per the climbers' abilities. Some individual members decided which group they wanted to kind of go up the mountain with. However, the vast majority were just kind of separated and stagnated into these certain groups. That this group would start at a certain time, and this final group, another group would start in the middle, and a last group, would start much later, with the full intent and awareness that upon, really just after the sunrise, that everybody's going to summit together. And man, it takes a lot of skill to be able to read people's bodies and actually accomplish that, with the exception of, maybe some extreme events where people's altitude sickness just kind of got the best of them and really, slowed them down. The vast majority of us even stagnated over, an hour or two, start times. We all summited together, which Mark will have a couple photos here soon. So it's really crazy how, these porters are able to do that. And it's, really phenomenal that they do it so accurately too.
Right. It's a good picture you got there, Mark. And just to note that, that is sunrise, and you look to be slightly above the horizon there, just to give a kind of an indication of how high you actually were.
That's right. So obviously sunrise. So this is probably about 6 a.m. and we're just south of the equator. So it's pretty close to, 12 hours night, 12 hours sunlight. But yeah, we're a little bit above the peak of this volcano right here. And I just thought that this was such a stunning photo there that it almost looks like the sun is coming up out of this volcano. And it's just an absolutely gorgeous photo. I think I'm going to have to go and enlarge this and put it on my wall in the office. But this is just another example of some of the scenery there that we got to see as we're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And so this is probably about 6 a.m. and we still got about another 3 hours that we're climbing. And so as Dan just said, we had multiple groups of us all left at different times. And sure enough, we all got to the top rim at the same time. And so, whoops. Yeah, we got up at the top of the rim at the same time. And when we got up there on the rim, we saw all of these glaciers. And as Dan said previously, these great glaciers have been shrinking. They've been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And one of my comments that these glaciers almost look like ice cubes that were sitting out on a black sandy beach, because this is all volcanic ash, that's all over the place there. But yet there's these huge, blocks of ice, these glaciers that are out there. So this is the view when you get up on the top of the rim. And when you get to the top of the rim, you're really not too far away from the peak. But that peak there, you're at 19,000 feet elevation, so you're moving really slow. So here's some of the climbers that, and we all did get together, and you'll see photos of this in a second. But here's some of the climbers. You can see the trail that's ahead of us. And if you look out there on the horizon, you'll see the big sign there that says that you're at the peak of Mount Kilimanjaro. And it took a little time just to walk that distance. It doesn't look so far, but when you're walking at 19,000 feet elevation.
And how steep was that incline? I can't necessarily tell from the photo as they're not. Is it as steep as it looks? Or?
There's a slight elevation gain there. I would say it's maybe about a five degree elevation gain there. It's so it slopes up. And then, of course, after we finally get to that sign, we do a group photo of all of us. Dan and I over there on the right, we held up the St. Jude Tau Kappa Epsilon flag together, because that was what we were doing the big climb on. And just a comment there. So the shirt I'm wearing, that black shirt there with the TKE on it, it has the names of over 1,000 SIU alumni that all were members of the Tau Kappa Epsilon chapter there at SIU. And so I carried with me the names of all of my fellow fraternity brothers up to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And I tell you, that was really something to accomplish this climb. It was really something special. Everyone felt just so excited to actually be able to make it to the top. Now, the photo on the left, there's a flag in there. And so that's the Jane Goodall Roots and Shoots Foundation flag. And so we helped to dedicate part of that climb also to her foundation there to encourage reforestation. And so, Dan, you want to add there? What was your feeling there reaching the top, Dan?
Yeah, man, just looking at these photos kind of taking me back, and I almost feel like the compression on my head. So yeah, you're definitely feeling the elevation with every step that you do. And while that elevation in the previous photo, whether it's 5 degrees, 10 degrees, whatever it is, it's, I mean, the saying going up the mountain was pole pole, which just means slowly, slowly. And you're literally just doing one foot in front of the other. But yeah, just looking at these photos again, I feel the compression on my head. That elevation was real. Yeah, there's I mean the sense of accomplishment once you hit that peak. I mean, um it's just kind of it's surreal. You know, graduating college, you know, getting through basic training, or you know, everybody has their little milestones in life, and this was just another one for me that, you know, kind of the realization of what one is capable of, and it kind of makes you hungry to find the next. You know, put Bill Bruns at the edge of his seat there and find something new and challenging to do next time. But yeah, it was really surreal. Got some photos up there, got some videos up there to send to some friends. I actually remain in contact with a friend from high school, one of the few, and we only speak like once a year, which is on my birthday and hers. And her birthday was on this day, March 1st, when we actually summited. And you know, for whatever reason, didn't slip my mind, and shot her a nice little video from the top, and she was just blown away that I would even remember. But yeah, it was really cool.
All right, and let me see what's my next one. Oh, okay. So I'm going to do a plug here. So Southern Illinois University, the Top Cap Epsilon chapter, we're still raising money for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. So, you know, my plead or my request there is that if any of you are in a position there where you can help donate to St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, we really would like you to do that. The work they do with the young children there who have cancer is just fantastic. And I want to ask Dan to share a little bit of information about the young man there that we helped to climb Mount Kilimanjaro for. Dan, you want to talk about Grit?
Yeah, I guess before I do that, I'd like to kind of tag in Bill Bruns here, because Bill was an instrumental part of really looping in our national philanthropy, both with TKE headquarters and then through them with St. Jude. So I'd like Bill to share a little bit about how he accomplished that.
So yeah, thanks, Dan. I know a lot of folks at the TKE International Foundation and the fraternity in general. And so I contacted those folks, and they did an article in the TKE magazine, as well as contacted Caleb and the folks at the Alumni Association. They were very interested as well. And from there, it just sort of snowballed. Good enough? Oh, right. So the fundraising thing, one thing about that fundraising slide is you can't really tell what look like spaces in that URL are actually underscores. So if anybody's trying to type that in and go to donate at that address, they're actually underscores. And also, Mark said earlier in the broadcast that the elevation gain was about 16,000 feet. So we were aiming for about $16,000 raised, and we nearly got there. So we consider it very, very successful.
For sure. So yeah, through our contacts with you know, Bill kind of, you know, working his network to you know, contact both TKE headquarters and then consequently the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. We're put into contact with just one family, you know, who's receiving you know, the full benefit of what St. Jude has to offer. And we, prior to going on to, you know, the hike, we kind of dedicated our hike to a certain young man who is 3 years old. His name is Grit. And I mean, all things considered, I couldn't think of anybody better to dedicate a hike to than a young man whose name is Grit, because that's exactly what was required to get to the peak of this. And after dedicating, you know, it was kind of like we were kind of working with St. Jude and both TKE to really kind of put this together. And the disconnect at the time was Grit and his family, directly. However, after the hike took place, again, in just a small world, I guess, scheme of events, I'm having a blank on his name, but the guy at headquarters, Nate Lehman at headquarters, is down at St. Jude all the time. And he was at some event at the hospital, and amongst the, I guess, the attendees there was Grit's father. And somehow this event came to be a speaking point, and they connected, and Grit's father was just blown away. And the next thing I know, I've got this friend request on Facebook of Grit's father himself. And since then, we kind of go back and forth, send him some Christmas gifts, and send him a nice little aloha shirt from Hawaii. And since Grit's cancer has been in remission, so it was really great to see that, something like as simple as our efforts, actually coming to fruition to, helping another family. So it's been really phenomenal to maintain that contact throughout.
Well, it sounds like great work that you guys did there on behalf of the family and on behalf of St. Jude's as well. What's next? What's the next challenge?
I don't know, Bill. What don't you want me to do? I'll go do that.
Dan, just don't die, right? Ever since Dan graduated, I have stayed in contact with him, and he got deployed to overseas with the Navy. And I said, Dan, just don't die. And then he says, I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And I was like, oh my God, Dan, just don't die. And then a couple months after that, he was like, I'm going to go swimming with sharks. I'm like, Dan, don't die. So just whatever you do, Dan, just don't die.
Well, at least he's going to be quarantined safely in the house for at least the next few weeks. All right. Well, anything else that anyone wants to talk about or add on this conversation? I think it's been a good recap of the project and of the climb that you guys did. But I'll leave you guys with the last words if you have any.
Just a last comment. I would say that fraternities are all about fraternal, lifelong relationships. So I felt really pleased and honored there to meet Dan. We're about 30 years difference in age, but we have that common experience through our fraternity. In many of the other fraternities and sororities at SIU, they have probably similar stories to go and share. We're through multiple generations there. The sorority members or the fraternity members have very positive experiences with their sorority house or their fraternity house. And it all comes together there with their college experience that they had at SIU. And so I was really pleased to do this experience and to help bring a positive message there as far as SIU and the fraternity, and to do something really positive for this young man, Grit.
Tau Kappa Epsilon promotes itself as the fraternity for life. And I see these kinds of things happen frequently, where two people meet and, oh, we're both Teeks, wow. And then they have that initial bond. It keeps us in touch with our fraternity, of course, but and our friends, but it also keeps us in touch with our university. It really is.
Absolutely. Bill nailed it. I mean, we have this common thread, and it's amazing. The frequency, as he said, it happens all the time. I mean, while I was deployed to Afghanistan, unfortunately, he's not a Carbondale alum, but I bumped into a member of TKE from SIU Edwardsville, and it just so happened to be that massive dude known as the Big Show from the WWE. So I was able to meet with him, and it was hilarious because Vince, I don't know if anybody's fans, but Vince McMahon, like the what do you call it, CEO WWE was saying, "Hey," his name's Paul. "Hey, Paul, get over here," and the Big Show was just like, "Yeah, go away, dude. I'm chatting with some brothers over here." So with another Sikh that I met in Afghanistan. So it was really cool to experience that. And as Bill said, it happens all the time. I meet Sikhs all around the world. I'm in real estate here in Hawaii, and actually, when we posted the fundraiser on Facebook, one of the people in the industry here, one of the top lenders on the island, reaches out to me. He goes, "Bro, you're a Sikh?" And I'm just like, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, me too." Exchange a handshake, and next thing I know, he's donating to our cause. So it's just really cool. I mean, maintaining those relationships is just so important, as we move forward in life to really, get the most out of life. You'll be amazed who you encounter and what those relationships will actually transpire to.
Well, I think if anyone's learned anything in the last few month or so, it's about the value of the relationships that we have with one another. Being locked away from one another for so long, I think everyone will come out of this with much more of an awareness of those kind of bonds.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for taking some time to talk with us today. We appreciate each and every one of you and sharing the story, and also just sharing in the good deeds that you've done. So I thank you for your time, and everyone who has tuned in, have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much. Goodbye.